I'm doing well. Thanks.
Right. Hi, Cody. Hi, Amber. Right.
Hi, morning, Joe, or afternoon.
Yeah.
What is it? 5 o'clock there? That
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. Middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
Barely past tea time.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think everyone's definitely staying inside today. We've had like an Arctic blast and it's been snowing, it's freezing outside.
Huh.
So
But we've had records here in the West. It isn't terrible here in Las Vegas, but huge amounts of snow all around us.
oh really? I didn't
Rec-
know I didn't know it snowed in Nevada. I thought it was just always hot, but
It doesn't snow very often. I've seen in my house, which is just outside Las Vegas, snowflakes a couple of times this year, but nothing that's stuck. But in the mountains between here and the ocean, and in California, they've got like 10 feet of snow in the last couple of weeks, and people can't get out
oh
and
wow.
the mountains. So it's a serious deal for them. There are
Yeah.
people without food and medicine or whatever stuck in the mountains, and
Oh gosh. Yeah, I suppose it's just difficult to know how to handle it if you're not used to it.
you know, even San Diego, I think the mountains outside San Diego, they had a blizzard watch for the first time in history.
Oh my God.
So I guess global warming is a fact of the
Yeah, this is this is worrying.
certainly is. So we have any questions or comments or whatever before we launch into looking at beeps today?
No, I don't think so. I should mention that I wore the beeper today instead of yesterday. Um, and yeah, no, that's it, I think.
Okay, then I think I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Yep, sounds good.
Great. The first beep it went off at just after 12:30, and I was sitting on my sofa watching the news, holding my phone, and the beep went off while I was staring off into space, thinking about how to reply to an email that I just read.
And would you say thinking about, do you mean, is that in your experience or is that just a fact of the universe? I'm engaged in this unconsciously or outside of my awareness or whatever.
I think it was definitely part of my awareness because it was a decision. It was the the uh, the email was about a house that me and my partner are trying to buy, and they just agreed to give us some money off for a bunch of problems with the house. And I was thinking about whether or not to accept it. So yeah, it was like it was a the thought that the thinking was a I was staring off into space and thinking about the decision basically. I think.
And so how does that thinking go? Is that, are you experiencing that or are you just presuming that it's ongoing and sooner or later you're going to come up with an answer to it?
It's strange because I find it quite difficult to explain, like to describe the experience of thinking about the decision. Because at the time, in my conscious awareness, I've written this down. I had an image of the house in my head, but in particular, I had an image of the garden in the house in my head. So the thinking was quite visual, um, and I suppose the image of the garden of the house was more present in my experience than me like consciously actively thinking, oh, should I accept it? Should I decline it and walk away? Um, but I was definitely picturing the garden of the house because I was thinking about whether or not we should say yes or just walk away.
And
Um,
so does that mean that at the very moment of the beep, the picture, the inner seeing of the house is present to me And the decision making is ongoing, but not so much present to me directly in my experience.
Yeah, yeah. It was quite strange actually because I remember I noted it down. The beep went off as I was staring off into space. I had the TV in front of me with the news just going. I had my phone in my left hand, but I was staring off into space, um, and I could just I could see the rest of my flat, but the thing that was really present was the image of the garden of the house while I was thinking about uh, whether how to reply to the email, like whether to say yes or no.
Well, let's start with the garden then. So what do you see?
So see, it's only a very small part of the garden, and it's the part that's like right up against the house. It's not even a very nice part of the garden. It's actually like the worst part of the garden. So I don't know why I was thinking that. And it was a white wall of the house, and it was where the white wall of the house meets the garden, and there's like a bit of concrete, and it was that bit. So it wasn't like a lush. It wasn't like the garden's not that big anyway, but it wasn't the actual wasn't really like the good part of the garden. It was just the concrete bit that met the white of the house.
Okay. And are you interested in any particular portion of that, or is the whiteness of the wall, the concrete of it, or is it just at the moment I happen to be seeing that and happens to be a white wall and happens to be concrete?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was don't know. I wasn't interested in any particular part. It was just where the white wall meets the concrete.
Okay.
It was again quite a small part of the where the garden meets the house. For some reason, I just pictured that.
Okay. And then at the same time, there is apparently ongoing a thought process about should you accept the offer. But either that ongoingness is outside of your awareness, or so far we haven't figured out a way to talk about it.
Yeah, that's more difficult because for me to describe because I don't know if at the moment of the beep, I don't if it I it feels like I wasn't consciously processing that. It wasn't in my conscious mind. Should I or shouldn't I? Uh, I feel like it was there because I was thinking of the house and the garden, and I was I was holding my phone. I had the email in front of me, but the beep. I mean, it's difficult for me to explain if that was actually a part of the beep or if it was before or if it was a part of the beep, but it was subconscious.
Okay. Well, that kind of thing isn't surprising to me at all, because I think that we are multi-processors, and a lot of our thought process takes place outside of direct experience. Some of it is directly experienced, and some of it's not. And this, it sounds like, for reasons that are maybe a little bit hard to describe, the part that makes its way into awareness is the picture of the garden. I see that. I see the garden. And the rest of the processing, I guess we can understand or infer something was probably ongoing, but it's not ongoing in my direct experience.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good reflection of the experience.
And then your eyeballs are aimed out into space off to the right somewhere. And are you seeing that the rest of your flat, or is that just my eyeballs are pointing at the rest of my flat, but I'm not really seeing it?
So I could see it, but it was definitely not in focus. Because normally, uh, when I look that way on the sofa, I can see my bookshelf, and I quite like looking at my bookshelf because I think, oh, I need to read that again or whatever. But the bookshelf it was hard to see. It was almost like I wasn't seeing it. It was it was either blurry or just very, it was just very, I don't know. I want to say very out of focus. I want to say almost like it wasn't there. Uh,
So let's at least accept the possibility that my eyes can be opened and aiming at something and not seeing it at all. And by not seeing it, I mean not experiencing it. My visual system is no doubt processing it. But that doesn't mean that it's in my experience any more than my thought process of whether I should buy this house. I'm no doubt my neurons are in some way engaged with that. Whether or not that's in my direct experience is another deal.
yeah. What the image of the, the bit of the garden and the house was definitely a lot stronger than, to the point, I would say, to the point of making the bookshelf and the background of the flat almost invisible. I mean, it was, yeah, it was, yeah, it was.
And I guess I would also say that we have discovered that it probably is not wise to try to distinguish between almost invisible and invisible. It's
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing we call in the weeds. It's hard to
Yeah, it's
handle that.
difficult. It's really difficult for me. I sort of, it's strange because I want to say it was invisible and I didn't see it, because that is what it felt like. But I don't know. I suppose because I know that that's not possible.
Well, that's why I said a little bit ago, let's accept that it is possible. And then that makes the battle that you're having right now something like, well, experientially, I'm not seeing it, but cognitively, I think I must be seeing it. And therefore, I've got this war going on inside me. Well, should I let my cognition win or should I let my experience win? And
Yeah, that's a good point.
and so, as a general rule, I would like us to set aside what we call bracket the cognitive understanding about the way experience must work, and just report about the experience.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think in that case, it's. I suppose my answer is really I don't know, but I'm leaning more towards I couldn't see it.
Okay.
The image of the garden was very present.
So I accept both of those things, but I don't think they're necessarily related to each other. The image can be very present, has absolutely nothing to do with whether your real eyes are seeing the wall or not. An inner seeing can be present and at the same time externally seeing, or an internal seeing can be present and not seeing what my eyeballs are aimed at. So it's not like I don't want us to think that an inner seeing obliterates the external seeing. That I don't think is true in general. It might be true sometimes, but it's not true always, for sure. But I would say that the battle between what I think has to happen and what I actually experience is a big part of the DES task. We try to set aside what we think must happen in favor of what we are directly experiencing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the same thing. So I'm now going to call the attention to your backside and your butt and whatever. And when I do that, you can say, well, I can feel the back of my chair and the bottom of my rear end and whatever. And I'm guessing that you haven't really been paying attention to that for the last 15 minutes. You've been skillfully navigating with that. You haven't fallen off the chair or whatever. But it's not in your direct experience, even though your neurons have been processing that. And the same is true in the visual system and the auditory system and every other system. I think you can do a lot of processing that takes place outside of awareness.
Yeah. It's fascinating because it makes me think that in our day-to-day lives we must be experiencing so much that but then when we try and think about that experience or explain it, um, the sort of people aren't, yeah, as you said, like people are letting their cognition and the framing of things and get in the way of the experience, or actually, um, I don't know. It's strange.
One problem is that the word experience itself is very problematic. So it's a legitimate version of the world to say that I'm experiencing the backside of my chair and I'm experiencing the bottom of my feet and I'm experiencing the sound of the air conditioner and all that stuff. That stuff is being gathered by my sensory apparatus and processed to some degree. There's no question about that. If somebody says Russ over there in the next room, I'm going to pay attention to that. And so I've been monitoring the next room all the time, to some degree. And it's fair to say, well, all that stuff is in my experience. But it's also fair to say there's really sort of only a much smaller subset of that's my directly apprehended experience. We could still call that experience, but like your visualization of the garden, we could say, well, let's limit ourselves to that as being what I mean by experience. Those are two very different meanings of the same word, and that's part of what makes the world of psychology in general difficult. And as a principle, descriptive experience sampling is interested in the kind of thing that makes its way into your directly apprehended experience, like the seeing of the garden, and is not particularly interested in that broader, more mechanical, I guess you would say, or afferential or whatever version of experience.
Yeah.
You're processing a whole lot of stuff that you would never become aware of.
Yeah. Do you think, do you think this means that we're in many ways quite bad at observing things then? Because because they say, don't they, that the visual system just forms an impression of the outside world, that it's not actually, you're just interpreting wavelengths of light, and it's just an impression of what's really out there. And so if we're doing that, and if we're observing things, as you said, like using processing and cognitive abilities that may then sort of almost scramble the sort of authenticity of the experience, do you think that means that we're quite sort of bad observers? Or I'm not sure if that question makes sense.
So I guess I would say I either don't care about that problem, or I don't think it's tractable. I guess I care about it, but I don't think it's tractable, so I don't spend too much time thinking about it. What I think is that the however many billion neurons and however many multi-billion synapses you've got in the bag of bones and skin and whatever that's called Joe Jebelli, that stuff is operating all the time in ways which you can't describe and I can't describe and nobody can nobody can describe. And out of that, for some reason, most people make something that is directly apprehended. You in this beep, I'm seeing the wall of my garden. Why is that? I don't think we can explain that. We can speculate about it, but I don't think there's too much doubt that at the moment of the beep, for whatever reason, Joe's bag of bones ended up seeing something that wasn't present to him at the moment, and so we're gonna call that an inner seeing, or seeing an image or something.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Joe's bag of bones was processing a whole lot of other stuff that wasn't present to him in the same way that, or even close, and as the wall scene, garden scene. And because of the difficulty of that, what our task, the DES task is, well, let's just try to stick with the kinds of stuff that actually does make its way into directly apprehended experience, and leave all that other stuff off to the side because there's just A, too much of it, and B, we can't access it. Maybe somebody else will come along with a super fMRI or whatever that you plug in and, gather all of your synaptic information. I doubt that. That's a pretty complicated task, but could be. But that's not our task. Our task is to try to, at first at least, just describe, for whatever reason, Joe's seeing the wall of his garden. And his eyeballs are aimed at the wall, and maybe he's seeing it, maybe he's not, or sort of hard to tell. Certainly he's not seeing it at the same level of discrimination or interest, or whatever you want to call that. Is he seeing something that's not present at all, namely the garden wall? And that's about as far as we can go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I feel like the inner seeing, I feel like it must happen a lot more than maybe people realize, but they just don't notice it as much. I don't know. It's strange.
Well, maybe that's true for you, but that's not necessarily true for everybody else. My recollection is that you've got sort of a lot of inner seeing. I'm not actually even sure about that because I don't have a very good memory for that kind of stuff. But it's not fair to judge somebody else's experience from your own. A lot of people don't have any, never have any inner seeing at all. But what I would say is that the reason that I can say that with pretty much confidence is that I've spent quite a bit of time with people like you trying to be as careful as we can be about what's going on at particular moments. I'm pretty sure that quite a few of those moments don't involve inner seeing. Some do.
Okay.
But if your general point was people are relatively bad at characterizing their own or others' inner experience, I'm 100% behind that.
That's a much better way of putting my train of thought. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I think that's very true. And the reason for that is that in order to contradict that, you got to go through the kind of thing that we're going through right now, which is hard work and time consuming, energy consuming, and has response costs and whatever.
Yeah. No, it is challenging. It's really challenging, especially the bracketing of the presuppositions.
Right.
I understand now why at the beginning of all this you said that it's going to take time and practice.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of this beep is a good example of that, I think, because I would say the likelihood is you've got a pretty strong presupposition that if your eyes are pointing at the bookshelf, you must be seeing the bookshelf. I'm guessing that's a presupposition, and somewhere down the road, you're going to become more confident in saying, well, my eyes are aimed at that, but I wasn't seeing it at all. But I'm not really sure about that. And that's what makes the task one of, I guess, skill for a better word, but we've got to convey to you that it looks like a presupposition without saying you're wrong about it, because it could be that it looks like a presupposition, but it's not a presupposition. Your eyes really are seeing the bookshelf. So I'm not trying to say, look here, Joe, your eyes are aimed at it. You weren't seeing the bookshelf. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, sounds, I might be mistaken, but it sounds to me like you got sort of a battle going on between your experience and your presuppositions. And a lot of people, maybe most people, probably almost everybody, loses to their presuppositions in the first round of the fight. And it takes a while for the experience to regroup and be able to say, well, this was experience and that wasn't.
Yeah, that's really well put.
On to beep number 2.
Okay. So beep number 2, went off not that long after beat number one. I was still sitting on the sofa. I was petting one of my cats, and I was looking at the bookshelf, and I was noticing the red spines of the bookshelf, and I wasn't really thinking anything. I was just noticing, for some reason, I was noticing the red spines, like the color red.
And so what exactly do you mean by noticing, or how does that noticing go?
I was looking at the bookshelf, and I was scanning it with my eyes, and for some reason I was the spines of the red books were were jumping out more than the other books, and I noticed that was happening. Yeah, I just noticed that. I noticed that I was that was happening, and I couldn't. I wasn't really thinking anything. I was just noticing for some reason the red spines.
And so is it at the moment of the beat, what is sort of most prominent, most salient is the red spines, and that's sort of it? Or it's possible the red spines deal is going on, and in addition to that, simultaneous to that, I have I am at the moment of the beat noticing to myself sort of like the red spines are sticking out, or something else. So the question is it just about the red spines-ness, or about sort of noticing the red spines-ness and I'm recognizing that I'm into the red spines-ness, or something, into the redness?
Yeah, it was both. It was noticing the red spines, but then also noticing that I'm noticing the red spines. I mean, because I was just scanning it, and it was just it was almost as if my eyes were jumping around to the red spines. But as that was happening, and I was noticing the red, there was at the same time I was noticing that I was noticing that for some reason.
And that's caught in flight by the beat.
Yeah, yeah, because I was just on the sofa with my cat, and I just looked up at the bookshelf, and I was just looking at it, and then that happened, and the beep went off as that was happening.
So can I ask a couple of questions here? So are there multiple red spines, and I'm going from one red spine to one over there to one over there or whatever? Is that?
Yeah.
So I'm not interested at the moment of the beep in one particular red spine.
No. It was like multiple, like sort of dotted around.
Okay. And then about the noticing that I'm noticing. So that would be the noticing of the red spines is something that's aimed out there, right? The bookshelf is out there. I'm seeing a spine there and a spine there and a spine there, whatever. The part that I'm noticing the red spines is I'm noticing this about Joe. And what I would like to, following up on Cody's questions, is that present at the same time as I'm looking at the red spines? Or is that something that happens, so the beep happens, I'm looking at the red spines, and then I notice, well, I'm looking at the red spine.
I feel like it was the noticing of the red spines came before me noticing that I was noticing it, but they were so close together that I still feel pretty confident that the noticing of that I was noticing it was still in the moment of the beep.
Okay.
But they were very close together. I would say that the first thing was me noticing just the red spines, but then I noticed that I was noticing it. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that they were both part of the beep, but very close together. But I agree with you that there was a separation. They weren't both happening at the same time. I think the first thing was that I was just noticing them flicking around. I was flicking around between them and noticing them.
So the red spines deal, I understood you to be saying at some point that this is primarily of the redness, like the color of the book and not so much the spineness. It happens to be of these book spines, but it's the redness. Is
Yeah.
is that is that faithful to what was going on there at the moment?
Yeah, it was the redness that it just stuck out for some reason. They're very bright red, and for whatever reason they were just sticking out more than the other ones, more than the other books. But it was definitely the color red that I was noticing.
When you say the very bright red, is that like just the fact of reality that I'm taking in? These books are really, really red, and I'm taking that in, or in my experience, is that have I turned up the redness? Am I seeing them as more red than they actually are in reality?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's difficult to answer. They did appear brighter than the other books around them, but I think that was because I was noticing them so much more than the other books. They were sticking out so much. So it's hard for me to know if me noticing them more than the other books was why they appeared a bit brighter, or that actually the other books just appeared fainter because I was noticing the red ones more. I can't tell if the red books were brighter or if the other books were fainter. There was definitely a difference though.
The redness is prominent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is there any way to say I understand like you to be saying earlier, there's several books on the bookshelf that are red. And so is this like I can imagine there's two things of red, one on this side of the bookshelf and one on the other, or there's 10 or there's 50, or I'm not interested in the number. I'm curious just about, I understand the redness, the red spine books are the ones that are sticking out. Do you see anything more about how that's present?
Well, there was so it's multiple shelves, so it wasn't like I was looking across. They appeared sort of. I mean, there's quite a few of them. The red books, there's about 6 or 7 red books, and they were appearing on different shelves. So like one was up here, one was down here, one was like over here. So they appeared as essentially a series of red blocks sort of scattered over a wall of books, basically.
So what I've got out of this experience is that at the moment of the beat, I'm going from red to red to red. Those happen to be spines of books, but it's not really I'm going from spine to spine to spine. It's from red to red to red.
Yeah.
And maybe I am aware of myself as doing that, or maybe not. That's a little hard to tell. And
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have no idea why I was doing that.
Okay. So the good news is we don't have to know that, and I'm ready to move on to beat number 3.
Sounds good.
what I guess I would say from this, from as sort of a side, a lot of people are visually attracted to colors like that every now and then. Sometimes, some people are often. A lot of people are surprised that they do that and don't have a good explanation for that, and I don't either. But it's pretty common.
Okay. Um, yeah. So beep number 3. So this happened at 5 to 2, and I'm in the kitchen. I'm basically tidying up the kitchen, and I'm listening to an audiobook at the same time. And the beep went off when I was looking down at my socks, and I was noticing a rabbit on my sock for some reason.
And so noticing, how is that present to you?
So
Is that just
but like I was looking down because I was unpacking the dishwasher, and then I was looking at my socks because there's a big blue rabbit on the socks, and I don't know, there was something, I just noticed the rabbit. I was just just looking at the rabbit for like, I don't know, like a couple of seconds, not very long at all. And that, as the beep went off.
okay? So is this experience I'm like noticing a rabbit, or I'm noticing blue that happens to be of a rabbit?
It was the rabbit.
Okay.
It was noticing the rabbit. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think, yeah. These are new socks that my partner got me. So I don't maybe, but then I didn't. Yeah. I know I have these socks, so it wasn't like surprise. It wasn't like, oh, there's a rabbit. Why am I wearing socks with a blue rabbit on them? I know I have them, but I've had them for a while. But I was noticing the rabbit for some reason.
And I think I may have asked this, but I just want to clarify. So is this, I'm noticing a rabbit that happens to be blue, or I'm noticing a blue rabbit? It's neither more about the blue or the rabbit. It's just, I'm noticing the blue rabbit, or the rabbit that happens to be blue. Does that distinction make sense?
It's the rabbit that happens to be blue.
Okay. And is there anything more to be said about that?
I mean, not really. I mean, I feel like there was a sort of faint feeling of happiness as well at the same time.
Okay.
Sort of, yeah, kind of a happiness that, I mean, I like these socks. No, yeah, I don't know. There was a faint feeling of happiness, but it wasn't anything more than that. I wasn't like really thinking anything.
And that faint feeling of happiness is occurring at the moment of the beep?
Yeah, as I'm noticing the rabbit.
And is there anything you want to say about how that's present to you, or is it just?
No, it was quite faint because I was a little bit distracted as well because I was listening to an audiobook at the same time. So yeah, it's hard to explain. I mean, yeah, it's difficult. This is probably not related to it, but it's possible that the happiness is linked because, I mean, I all of my socks have holes in them. So my partner got me these socks. They're actually quite nice. So, I mean, that's the happiness feeling was a comfort feeling as well. And that
And,
yeah.
and I'm gathering that the happy, comfort, whatever is associated with the socks. It's not like just in general, I'm happy and the beep catches me. It's that I'm sort of happily comforting looking at the socks.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I also gather that the audiobook is going on, but it's not part of my direct experience.
No, no, the rabbit, the rabbit and the socks were more present to me than the audiobook.
Okay.
The audiobook was a bit boring.
Okay. And so I think it's possible that your system is processing what you're hearing in the audiobook, but you're not responding to that before the footlights of consciousness. Or it's possible that you've just tuned the audiobook out altogether in favor of the socks for whatever reason at this moment. And then you'll have to climb back onto the audiobook when you get there. So I'm happy number 3.
Is there anything else in your experience at the moment, Joe?
No, I mean, I've written down the word company because like I noticed that I heard the word company from the audiobook at the moment of the beep. But that wasn't as present. I mean, it was a part of the moment of the beep, just the hearing the word company. I didn't see the word. I just heard the word, but it wasn't as present as the rabbit and the socks.
Okay. And is that just I'm hearing the audiobook beep happens to come at the word company. Is company part of a sentence?
Yeah, it was part of the sentence. I enjoy his company, or I enjoy your company. I didn't write that. It was definitely one of those two. And yeah.
And is the meaning of the word company in your experience at all as a part of this hearing? Or is it just I'm hearing the word company and that's as far as it goes?
Yeah, it was just the word company. I wasn't really thinking about it.
Okay.
The audiobook just it wasn't engaging me. Yeah. But I did notice the word company for some reason, which is, I mean, then it went off at the moment of the beep, which is why I wrote it down. So it was there, but it was just there as a word. Wasn't really thinking about the meaning or how it related to like the rest of the, like I wasn't thinking about it like how I should, I suppose. Like if I was actually properly like engaged with the audiobook, like I wasn't, it wasn't forming a part of the story or the narrative in any way. It was just kind of on its own. I think that's because I just wasn't engaged with the audiobook, so it was just words coming at me.
And is there anything more to be said about that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And is there anything else again in your experience other than what we've talked about?
No, apart from like the dishwasher, like the door on the dishwasher was pulled down, but I wasn't really noticing that at the moment of the beep. At the moment of the beep, I was much more drawn to my foot and the sock and the rabbit.
Okay. So the dishwasher, that's more of like a fact of the universe. Like it was
Yeah.
down and I went, okay.
exactly.
Then is there any other question?
Number 4.
So number 4, I don't want to talk about, if that's all right.
Okay.
And that's also true of number 5, if that's all right.
Okay. Number 6.
So number 6. So it was at 3 o'clock, and I was walking down my road, and I was turning around. I was turning a corner to come onto my high street to get a coffee, and so as I was walking into the coffee shop, I saw my friend Naz, who works at the coffee shop, and he fist bumped me while I was thinking about the word story. Yeah, so I turned the corner, walking into the coffee shop. I didn't actually see him at first because I was kind of looking down, and then I looked up, and I was thinking of the word story for some reason, and as I was thinking the word story and walking into the coffee shop, the beep went off at that moment. But he was in front of me, and he was smiling and fist bumping me. Yeah.
And is the fist bumping at the moment of the beep or after the beep? And by the moment of the beep, I mean actually 1 microsecond just before the beep begins.
No, so the fist bumping was like immediately, like a microsecond after the beep went off. So the actual moment of the beep itself was me walking into the coffee shop with thinking of the word story, and then seeing Naz. Yeah, that's the moment of the beep. He then very quickly fist bumped me.
Okay.
But that wasn't the exact moment of the beep. That was a moment afterwards, I'd say.
And is the walking present to you, or is that just a fact of the universe? So my question is basically, is what's present in your experience the word story, and that's about it? Everything else is context or comes after. Or is something about the walking or the entry into the store part of your direct apprehended experience?
Walking was more just a fact of the universe. The word story was very much part of my experience.
All right. So let's talk about that. So how does the word story present itself to you?
It's I could hear it basically in my head, but I can't quite figure out if I was hearing it or if it was in a in a hearing versus in a speech. I'm not quite sure which of those it was. I've written down that I think it was more in a hearing. Just hearing the word story.
In a voice?
Yeah, kind of like a whisper.
And a voice that you did have characteristics of voice with?
Not really, but if I had to give like ownership of it to anyone, it would be me. Like didn't sound like an alien, like a different, like a unfamiliar voice.
So it sounded like me whispering story?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And the question is whether I also experience myself as doing the whispering, as the speaker of the whisper, or whether I hear it as an auditory phenomenon.
Yeah. Like I wasn't, like my mouth wasn't moving. I wasn't like muttering it. I definitely heard it, but the confusing thing for me is whether or not I heard it as that it was kind of delivered into my consciousness, or if I constructed it. if that makes sense. I don't know if there's a real distinction there.
Well, let's accept the fact that you constructed it because it's in your head and I'm not there doing it. So you're the constructor of it. So but the question is whether the experience is an auditory experience, an inner auditory experience. I hear this, or whether it seems like an inner speaking experience. I speak maybe and speak and hear it. So the question is, do I have the experience of speaking, even though my mouth isn't moving or whatever? I could still experience myself as speaking it, or it can be entirely auditory. And the distinction there, maybe we've used this before, is something like speaking into a tape recorder. I can imagine myself whispering story into a tape recorder, in which case it's the experience of speaking it and maybe hearing myself at the same time. Or I can also imagine myself as hearing a whispered story come back out of the tape recorder, in which case there's no speaking involved in the experience.
It's really difficult because when you're explaining the speaking it into a recorder, I feel like that was much more what the experience was, as opposed to hearing it. But then when you said the second bit about hearing it as a whisper, a part of me then thinks, hang on, it was kind of like that, like hearing it as a whisper. It strangely felt like a bit of both. Like I was hearing it as a whisper, but that it was also me sort of whispering into a tape recorder, to use your metaphor. It felt like a bit of both.
And that is possible. I'm not discounting that possibility at all. And what I would say is that this is another example of why we have to do this on multiple occasions, because now we're going to have spent some time thinking about what the difference between whispering and hearing a whisper is. And next time, if a similar thing happens, it might be easier for you to sort that through. Or maybe not. Maybe the experience is just, excuse me, irretrievably conflated between hearing it and speaking it, and we can't tease those two things apart. I don't have a theory about that either. But so let's leave that as so somehow I'm apprehending a whispered story, and maybe I'm mostly hearing it, maybe I'm mostly speaking it. We're not sure about that. We can leave that as unspecified. And how about story? What's the deal with story? Is that part of a sentence or just the word story?
It's just the word story. Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was just the word story. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to explain because it wasn't linked to anything else.
Does it refer to a particular story? Do you know what?
No, it was all, I mean, it was almost like I was trying to figure out what a story is. Like it wasn't just like the word on its, I mean, so it was the word on its own, and it wasn't linked to anything else, but there was like a there was some kind of sort of question over it as well. Like I was wondering what a story is. I don't know. It was almost like my brain was trying to make sense of, what is a story?
Huh. And what is a story in general? Not is this thing that I'm contemplating doing a story? Or is that thing that I heard a story? But what is a story?
It was more just what is a story? Yeah.
Okay.
I heard the word and it was, yeah. Just didn't, yeah, just, yeah. I don't know if that's like, I don't know if that's, I can't tell if it was that I just momentarily lost the understanding of the word story, or if I was sort of like, just sort of maybe having a slightly deeper thought about what is the story. I don't know which of those two it is, or maybe there's probably lots of other possibilities. But yeah, there was definitely like a question hanging over it. Like I didn't was wondering what a story is.
And and I don't want, I want us to be not too and I don't want us to be more concrete about the wondering than it actually is. So I guess my question is something like, am I musingly whispering story or hearing it whispered one way or the other, but in a sort of amusing way, or am I whispering story and alongside that somehow wondering what's the story? Or maybe it's not possible to sort those things apart.
So I'm just trying to think about it. So it's whether or not I was musing story as in like thinking what a story is, or if I thought the word story and then separately wondered what a story is.
Right. That's sort of the question that I have in mind.
Yeah. So it was more the second one. It wasn't like I was musing story, what's a story, which is why the word story appeared. It was more that the word story appeared as a whisper. Whether I don't know, but again, I don't know if I heard it or if I spoke it. But then I feel like separate to that, there was the wondering about what a story is.
At the moment, and that is occurring at the moment to be caught in flight.
Yeah.
And so what that means, what that says is that at the moment of the beat, there's sort of like two things going on. There is this hearing, speaking, whispering story, and wondering what's the story.
Yeah.
Okay. And is the wondering what's the story prominent to you, or is that a sort of a low level?
It's not as prominent as just the word story. So it's, yeah, the wondering about what a story is was definitely like not as present as just the word story. Yeah.
But it's not just that I'm inferring that I was wondering about the word story. It's not just an inference. It's a observation of an experience, the wondering.
It was definitely a part of my experience. It's like what's the story?
So the distinction or the comparison, I guess, that's occurring to me is between this beep and the first one, where in the first one you were seeing a part of your house, and sort of by inference, I understood it. Well, the fact of the matter was I was wondering whether I should accept this offer or not, but that wasn't present to me.
Mm.
And here we're saying I'm speaking or hearing the word story, and present to me, I'm something like wondering what's a story.
Yeah, this was definitely present. Like compared to that, the first beep where it wasn't. Yeah, this was definitely a present part of the.
Okay.
Wondering was definitely a present part of the experience. I think. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's. Yeah, I don't know why, but.
Well, the good news is we don't have to know why. And I would say about the method is, as this is a good example of how we're trying to develop a way of understanding what you mean, how we should understand how your experience is, and we're going to do that by comparing this one to that one. and get as far as we can go, which is always going to be limited by Joe's particularly idiosyncratic vocabulary and ours. But we can refine it to the extent that we can refine it and say, well, there's a similarity between a thought process, but this one is more present and that one is less present. Then I think we're on the track of narrowing things down.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So that's 6. Do we do this again?
Yeah, I'd love to do it again if you guys are up for doing it again.
When would we like to do that? Same time?
Yes, the same time works for me if it works for you.
Okay.
I was going to say, I mean, because this is quite challenging, and because I'm sort of I want to say learning how to do it, but obviously that's not quite right either. But is it basically better to keep these sessions like not too far apart? Because
I would say yes in general. So sooner would be better than later, but the life happens and at this.
Yeah, I mean, is 2 weeks okay? It's not too far away.
That's fine with me. Well, I would say 1 week would be somewhat better, but only sort of narrowly focused. If you're distracted about something and you got to get something done or whatever, and you don't want to be doing it, then 2 weeks is definitely better.
Okay. Okay. I'm just trying to think if I can. 15.
So the bottom line is it's a matter of doing it when you're ready to do it. And if you're ready to do it on the 22nd, then that's when we should do it. And if you want to do it at some other time, then that's when we should do it.
Yeah, let's aim for the 22nd is good.
Okay.
Good.
So I'll do the same thing. I'll send out a Google Calendar invite to all of us so it's in our calendars, then email you the day before, Joe, to remind you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, again.
Yeah.
And I will send you a video anon.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot, Russ. Thanks, Cody and Amber. Speak soon.
You're
Alrighty.
welcome.
See you later.
See you then.